humerus. We have your line of study. So, posterior humerus, contraindicated with anterior instability. Very simple kind of process. We bring the arm to 90 degrees of abduction. And I could have a slide over a little bit. You're fine like this. And I'm going to contact the humerus with a nice broad contact and simply stress and thrust from T to A. Come on, sit up. What's that? Internal and external. It says heavy on your back. And in fact, stand up once more, please, because I need to slide the table over. And now lie your back. This is very easy, isn't it? Rolling chairs, rolling stools are best, and we do have rolling stools for this, so make sure you do these correctly. And you'll be doing it on the skin, so pretend I'm doing it on the skin. You can use a piece of face paper. Now, for an internally rotated humerus, think carefully. I'm going to externally rotate to treat it. I don't want her right at 90 degrees, because that's where impingement tends to occur, so I'm going to keep her a little bit below 90 degrees. I'm going to place her mid-forearm to my mid-thigh. That's what gives me the right kind of stress. If I put the elbow to the mid-thigh, that's more leverage than I want, and it adds risk. So I want mid-forearm to mid-thigh. And now I'm going to take a contact very high in the axilla, right around the humeral head. So I need to pay attention. I'm distal to the acromion, just distal to the acromion, and I'm taking tissue pull from internal to external rotation. What would be a contraindication for this? I realize I don't ask enough questions in class. I'm going to start asking more questions. What would be a contraindication for this? Yeah, look at her position. It's an apprehension test, right? And so if I thrust in that direction, it'd kill it. It wouldn't kill it, but it hurt. Okay, so now I use this so I don't get deodorant or sweat on my hands. Nice high internal and external rotation. And I'm going to stress and thrust with both the hand and the forearm simultaneously. Notice I'm positioning her so the hand is away from my crotch. Points off for putting your hand in your crotch. In the office.
Oh, man.
In the arena again. You see what happens? So now, again, I'm a little below 90 degrees. For an externally rotated humerus, I'm going to internally rotate to correct it. Mid-forearm to the mid-thigh. Not the elbow, that's more leverage than I want. I want mid-forearm to the mid-thigh. And again, contraindication for this is posterior instability. What am I doing when I internally rotate? I'm stretching the posterior capsule. Why do I get posterior dislocations from shock, electrical shock, or from seizures? It's because my internal rotators are contracting so hard that it's breaking the back of my capsule, and allowing it to go in a posterior direction. Palm faces ceiling test. You all should know that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can do this, you don't have a posterior dislocation. So now, same kind of idea, only now I'm going to internally rotate, just distal to the acromion, way high up in the axilla, my proximal forearm on her distal forearm, so I'm causing internal rotation with my forearm as well as with my hand, at the same time stressing and thrusting. Questions? Now we have the AI.
Yep.
And that's the last one, is that right?
And then you have medial.
Okay, medial humerus, we'll do all these ideas, right? Okay, so now for the AI humerus, now it's the same thing as the anterior humerus, except I have the arm against the chest. And I'll be thrusting in an inferior direction as well as an anterior to posterior direction, keeping the elbow midline. Every time we do anything anterior, it's very important to keep the elbow midline so that I can be moving along the shape of the glenoid. Right? I don't want to be down here, I want to be right here. Now, if I'm thrusting from inferior to superior, what would be a contraindication?
Impingement syndrome.
Impingement syndrome, exactly right. Mike Reed, kind of an important person, the only chiropractor to ever hold this position, the medical director of performance services for the USOC. By the way, it's kind of cool. So I was teaching Graston technique seminar this past weekend, And there was a guy from the USOC, and in fact, Bill Moreau is his boss, and Mike Reed is his boss. Bill Moreau has been here a few times, spoke at graduation a few times, another good friend. And they had it, originally had it set up that we were gonna teach Grafton the M1 and M2 in one weekend, one long weekend at the USOC. And they said, hey, do you come to me, do you wanna do that? I'm excited, I'm happy to do that. So I was gonna be the chiropractor, they also had a physical therapist and a lab trainer. The three of us were gonna teach this group. I'll cancel everything in my life to do this, it's just kind of an exciting thing. Partly because they have this meet Colorado Springs. I understand they have really good food. It's really healthy food, but also really good healthy food. And then somehow they couldn't come with an agreement. I think the owner of Grafton wanted them to buy X number of sets for us to do this, and we ended up not doing it. So now they're sending in one at a time to these seminars. And so I said to him, well, yeah, tell Bill, I want to teach some seminars on campus, so organize it. Okay, so now, elbow midline. I'm going to stabilize the spine of the scapula. Her arm is against her chest. And so now, I'm going to contact the spine of the scapula and pull inferiorly, and just like we did before, I have the spine of the scapula is between the index and chiropractic index finger. I'm stressing it in inferior direction, or I can grab it with my forefingers from a superior to inferior direction, stressing it inferiorly. And then I simply do a body drop on the elbow, inferior to superior, anterior, posterior, medial, lateral. Now, depending on the size of a person, someone who's very large, that still might be too much like this. And so there's a seated adjustment for the same problem. Maybe sit up, sit facing away from me, all the way back on the table. That's good. And in this case, then I can kind of have her sort of flex over all of her body mass, and that allows me to position her a little bit better. And so now I have her hand again on the opposite shoulder for internal rotation, on the same shoulder for external rotation, right, just like this. Same thing, I'm going to stabilize the spine of the scapula with my sternum. The difference is I'm not going to be at 90 degrees flexion. I'm going to bring her down, her arm down against her chest so that I have the inferior to superior direction of force. Stabilize this with my sternum, and then stress and thrust, inferior to superior, anterior, posterior, medial, lateral. That was the adjustment that was done. That's the classic Gonstead adjustment for the shoulder, by the way. That's the adjustment that was done on Mike Reed and made him a lot worse. And so he and I were on this committee, this upper extremity committee for the CCGPP. I didn't forget what that means. But we brought this up, and he said, oh yeah, we don't want to be doing that if you have impingement syndrome, because it makes me a lot worse. Okay, bring the arm down. Any questions? Medial humerus, have you lined your back? So again, for a woman, have you cover your breast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my hand high into the axilla. And this is a true scissors movement. The other hand is in the distal humerus. Nice broad contact. And I'm simply going to go like this to displace the humerus laterally. So the proximal hand is going to be stressing in a lateral direction, and the distal hand is going to be stressing in a medial direction. I'm very careful because some people have this tendency to go like this, to flex the fingers and use my knuckles as leverage against the ribs. It hurts like hell. So you got to keep that really flat hand, and it's a true scissors movement. There's no leverage system in this adjustment. So now I'm also going to place her hand on her lap. And by placing her hand on her lap, that's going to internally rotate, which relaxes the anterior capsule. And then I'm simply going to stress medial lateral. You look for the movement, and if there's an absence of movement, you thrust. So we close it up. Then we have the seated adjustment for this. This is where I'm going to take my watch. And have it imprinted against your ribs. So now I'm going to use my forearm as leverage, not my hand. So it's not like this, but it's like this. So my forearm is between her ribs and her humerus. And I have the hand relaxed in the lap that internally rotates. And I want to get real high into the axilla. So I'm lifting up here and I'm stressing down. So I'm stressing down by contacting the epicondyles. And then I stress and thrust in the medial direction. And depending on my size and my patient's size, I might need to come a little further into the axilla. So a little more meat in the forearm, that creates greater leverage, and then I stress down and stress medial and thrust. And if I have skinny forearms, you can always put towels to create more leverage.
Are you coming with any sort of force with your forearm, or is it just
No,
the
it's
leverage?
just a lever. Yeah, good question.
So Doctor, ones that have seated or supine or seated or prone or whatever, we just have to do one or the other?
Yes, but we'll tell you which one.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll tell you specifically. I want you to show this in a seated position.
okay.
The supine, this one, do you just drop too, or just in the?
No, it's just straight
Okay.
thrust, yeah. Any questions? Okay, thanks very much.